Thank you, Greg, for the introduction and the opportunity to give the Veterans Day address this year. Let me first say to each of the veterans in the audience and to those watching today's program at home, thank you for your service to our country. It's because of you and the veterans who are no longer with us and the young women and men who serve today that we are free to pursue life, liberty, and most of all, happiness. And let me commend those responsible for today's program, keeping this Elgin tradition alive in this time of COVID. New challenges arise seemingly every day, and you find the answers and keep our lives moving forward. As a journalist who has worked in this profession for nearly 40 years, first as a reporter and editor, before becoming a newspaper owner here 13 years ago, I've sat in the audience reporting on programs like this. I've sat behind many of you in awe of the service you have given to our country. I speak to you today not as a veteran, but the son of a father who was part of the greatest generation, the generation who fought and won World War II. When I became of age to serve, our nation was in the beginning years of an all-volunteer army. I chose to follow another path that ultimately brought me here today. My family has a history of military service. My grandfather served in the Army during World War I. My father, who came of age during the Great Depression, had just an 8th grade education when he joined the Army. He was a member of the 656 Tank Destroyer Battalion, which marched across Europe and into Nazi Germany in 1945. My father was one of many who enlisted. Then, others were drafted. All served their nation united as never before to rid Europe of fascism and, in the Pacific, to fight for unconditional victory over Japan following Pearl Harbor. More about Dad later. Now, standing in front of you, today's observance of Veterans Day takes on a new meaning for me. Today offers an opportunity to share my thoughts about the men and women who have served our country in times of war, when in the heat of battle all there was today. Tomorrow was promised to no one. And in times of peace when, after the battle had been won, it was time to secure the peace, as my father-in-law did in Germany in 1946. As a journalist, we are taught to observe and report, using every physical tool God has given us. It's true, as others have said, we write the first draft of history. Now, let me share some observations about veterans. 1. As I look into your eyes, I know none of us can fully comprehend what you have seen. You've witnessed, whether it be in Korea, Vietnam, or the Middle East, humanity at its best and its worst. Those images sometimes haunt veterans long after they've returned home. What my father saw on the battlefields of Europe, he seldom spoke of. I suspect much of what he saw he didn't want to remember. 2. What you experienced serving our country has shaped your view of the world ever since. The lines on your faces are there, signs of age and experiences shared half a world away, and in the years since here at home. There's no way I can say how those experiences have shaped who you are and what you became, but if I were to guess, I would say you gave your country the best years of your life wearing a military uniform. What you learned during that time has shaped your life ever since. 3. Then there's your hands. Some are wrinkly, some are scarred, but none are soft. Just by looking at these hands, only you know what they have done, the work they did for people who had nothing and no hope to better their lives. You gave them the promise of a better tomorrow. For those who were stationed stateside, your experience was different, but your love of country was still the same. Each of you are a hero in my book, just as my father was a hero. Each of you has a story to tell. How do I know that? Let me go back to my father's story. Just 2 weeks before he passed away, I spent an afternoon with him in the nursing home. On that day, he had a clear mind, and the conversation turned to his time in the Army. He shared a short story about, of all things, beets. Yes, canned beets. He said American soldiers didn't care for the beats they were served by the KP. I said, "Dad, what does beats have to do with what we're talking about?" And then he told me something I never knew before. He said the people in the concentration camps were so hungry, having been starved by the Nazis, that they would eat anything the liberators would give them, including, in this case, beets. I never knew until that day that my father had been part of the Army divisions which helped liberate the concentration camps. He saw, firsthand, man's cruelty to man on a scale never seen or imagined before. I can only surmise that before he died, Dad wanted me to know where he had been and what he had seen as a soldier. My father was no different than any of the veterans here today. When the time came, you joined the military. You left your homes here and around Elgin, served your country where needed, and then you came home to pick up where you left off. Many of you married and started families. You raised your children to know right from wrong and to honor God and country. When you see our nation's flag, you stand tall and pay it the proper respect it deserves. As heroes, you are a rich part of Elgin's history. Each of you has a story to share, if you would. Both Elgin Public and Pope John have students enrolled in media classes. Here would be an opportunity for you to share your story and become part of Elgin's living history, never to be forgotten. I challenge the schools to initiate these interviews so that our rich history is preserved, not lost forever after a last breath has been taken. Time is fleeting. As I look out here, the number of veterans are less than a year ago. If you need help, I'll be glad to lend any assistance I can. In closing, let us never forget the contributions made by the men and women who have served our country. They gave the best years of their lives to make the world a better place. On foreign soil, whether it be in the freezing hills of Korea, the humid jungles of Vietnam, or the scorching sands of the Middle East, they toiled as soldiers of freedom. In doing so, they became our heroes, and we should be forever grateful. Because of your actions, we here today are able to say with pride the words made famous in song not so long ago. We, like you, are proud to be Americans where we know we're free. And we, like you, we won't forget those who died who gave that right to all of us. And we, like you, would gladly stand and defend her still today. Finally, we, like you, love this land. God bless the USA. Thank you.